Hey there, if you're receiving this video, it means that you're potentially interested in buying a property here in Ontario, which is really exciting stuff. With that being said, prior to actually getting the search started, there are just a couple of things that we must cover to ensure that our working relationship is as transparent and as professional as it can be. The landscape of Ontario real estate has undergone one distinct change recently, and that is the introduction of TRESA, which stands for Trust in Real Estate Services Act. TRESA is a consumer protection legislation governing the conduct of real estate agents and brokerages trading in real estate in the province of Ontario. This legislation has replaced the older version, RECO, which stood for Real Estate and Business Brokers Act. Now, the key change or distinction here with this implementation of TRESA is that all realtors in Ontario are now required to get the RECO information guide seen here, sent and signed by their respective clients prior to offering our advice, assistance, or services to you. The guide provides clear, concise, and plain information to help buyers and sellers make informed decisions. Before moving on, my name is Trey, folks, and I'm a real estate sales representative here in Ontario. Thank you so much for sitting through this brief housekeeping. Now, let's dive into the package to go over a couple of the findings. First, you'll see at the top of the screen that you've received a copy of this guide because you're considering receiving services from a real estate agent, or the agent is representing a client in the transaction and you may receive assistance from the agent. Working with me as a buyer, we will be focusing on the top bullet point here. Now, scrolling down the page, you'll see different topics that will be discussed throughout the form. While they are pretty self-explanatory, the highlighted text which reads, "Know the risks of representing yourself" is an important change to the legislation. TRESA has taken out the customer relationship from the transaction and now only has two relationship types. Number one, client. A client is any buyer or seller who is receiving services under a representation agreement with a brokerage. Any agreement a brokerage enters into with a buyer or a seller for the purposes of trading in real estate must include representation in respect of the services being provided. Number two, self-represented party. The term self-represented party applies to a person who in a trade is not a client of the brokerage. This is a person who is not under an agreement with a brokerage and is not receiving any services or representation. So why was the customer relationship taken out of real estate in Ontario, you may ask? The reason is that the distinction between being a customer and being a client was not an obvious one for consumers who were generally unfamiliar with the types of relationships permitted and the forms and agreements brokerages use. In addition, realtors have fiduciary duties to their clients and not to customers or self-represented parties. So the realtor must act in the best interest of clients, disclose any types of conflicts, maintain their utmost loyalty with their clients, and not make a secret profit, to name a few things. Scrolling down to page 2, you'll see these services an agent can offer you are going to be outlined in this section. Keep in mind that a great agent will go deeper than this list and will help you with every step of the way, even after closing. This can mean that they're showing you how to pay your property taxes for the first time, maybe, right? Another example would be that they're going to help you with a moving concierge to seamlessly make that jump into your new space, or they might pass along their long list of preferred vendors your way so that all parts of the real estate transaction and any general maintenance is going to be covered for you, in addition to clearly discussing strategy and market stats to effectively make you a successful buyer. This form ultimately breaks down the meaning of different relationships in real estate transactions and is the path forward to loyalty. Your realtor, me in this example, will give you their utmost loyalty throughout the process, and we ask in return the same type of loyalty be returned to us in the form of a client relationship. If you're a self-represented party, the realtor actually won't be able to offer these services to you, since real estate transactions can be complex and often come with risks or possible complications for those inexperienced buyers or sellers. This is why most people choose to receive the services, opinions, and advice that a real estate agent can provide to help them successfully navigate a real estate transaction. In keeping with the topic of risk, page 4 states that there are significant risks to representing yourself in a real estate transaction if you do not have the right knowledge or expertise required to navigate the transaction completely on your own. You're going to be dealing with a seller or a buyer client who is benefiting from the services, opinions, and advice of an experienced real estate agent who has their client's best interests in heart. Here, RECO recommends that you seek independent professional advice before you proceed as a self-represented party, and concludes with some more in-depth content about what actually goes into a real estate transaction. If you do choose to be a self-represented party, you have the option to change your mind at any time and hire a real estate professional to have that added layer of protection in the transaction. When discussing multiple representation, that means a designated representative or a brokerage represents more than one client with competing interests in the same transaction. Again, for the purposes of our transaction, if you're buying with me, then you won't have to deal with multiple representation, but it's important to know how this can happen, so give this section a read. Lastly, the offer process has changed now. The sellers now have the option to have an open bidding format if they desire. They have to get notice in writing, but this means that they have to disclose the number of competing offers, the price, conditions, closing date, etc. Sellers cannot disclose your personal information, however, but this stage of the offer process will be discussed in more detail on a case-by-case basis once we get to this step. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and breakdown about the RECO information guide that just got implemented as of December 1st, and please let me know if you have any questions.